Hello once again everybody, it's Chris Bezanoy or Chris B with CSB Security Inc. and another informative video. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 overkill things that I see when it comes to a security system design or the programming of security systems for cannabis facilities in Canada, but also all over the world. Before I move forward, a little bit of a disclaimer I'm about to tell you is based on my experience. It's based on the fact that I have 15 certifications in access control, video surveillance, and intrusion detection systems. It's based on the fact that we work with great contractors, security system installers around the world. It's based on the fact that we deal and talk with a lot of consultants in the industry. We've seen a lot of designs come our way for review. It doesn't change the fact that what I'm about to tell you is my opinion. Your opinion and your experience may vary. Also, as a disclaimer, I'd like to note, my top 5 list by no means mean that the security contractor or the consultant that designed your security system didn't know what they were doing. It doesn't mean that if we found something to be overkill, they didn't understand the regulations. It doesn't mean that they were trying to gouge you for more money. And it certainly doesn't mean that they didn't understand how security systems work. It just means, from my point of view, it was overkill. So let's dive right in. This list is in no particular order. So number 1 on the list, we're going to talk about motion detectors. As we all know, motion detectors are used to detect motion in a certain range, whether it's 30 feet, 50 feet, 150 feet, whatever it may be. But it detects motion when the system is armed and will set off an alarm. You do need motion detection to be compliant with the current regulations. We're talking trim rooms, packaging rooms, shipping and receiving, certain areas within your facility, you do need motion detection. What I consider to be overkill is when I see a design that has motion detectors in every single office, in washrooms, in maybe mechanical rooms, electrical rooms. Maybe there's a mezzanine that has your HVAC that's above your grow space and has a long-range motion detector to detect motion around your HVAC. Maybe it's a roof line. Either way you look at it, most of the time what I find is that there's too many motion detectors inside of your facility. Yes, you could argue that motion detection is not that expensive. You could have a security contractor that says, yeah, okay, Chris, I get it, but come on, it's very cheap to do motion detection, and I get that. But keep in mind, it's the management of that motion detector or those motion detectors. So if you tell Health Canada, look at our design, it's awesome. We've got all these motion detectors everywhere, and they issue a license based on your design, you're going to have to comply to that design. You can't just get rid of a few motion detectors here and there because they're annoying to you. Now that you told Health Canada there's motion detection in certain offices, it's got to remain. You got to maintain those motion detectors. So overkill for motion detection, as an example, is, again, motion detectors in every single offices. I've seen a design that had 15 offices and a motion detector in every single office. I've seen motion detection inside of washrooms. The only time that's really applicable is if you're using the facility walls as your perimeter. And even then, is it the right thing to do? So motion detectors I see everywhere inside facilities. Rooftop, exterior, interior, along fence lines, in addition to fence disturbance systems, in addition to video surveillance. Sometimes it's overkill, and I see it all the time. Number 2 on the overkill list is access control. So under the old regulations, you needed to log access to and from every single cannabis present room in a facility. Under the new regulations, you no longer need to log access out of cannabis present rooms except for the secured storage room. So in other words, secured storage or vault, you still need to log access to and from using the card readers on either side of a door. Under the new regulations, you no longer need to do that. You just need to restrict access to the space using a card reader on the outside of the door. You don't need a card reader inside anymore. All too often I've seen designs that have come across our plate that we have not designed ourselves where it still has logging to and from every single room. Not only cannabis present rooms, but almost every single door in the facility. Now, it's not to say that it is wrong. Perhaps it's a business decision. Perhaps the security contractor or designer of the system wanted to use card readers on both sides of a door for arming and disarming of the intrusion detection devices for that room. That could potentially be legitimate. Maybe they're doing people counting. They want to know when somebody went into a room, how long they were in that room, and when they left. In those situations, those are what we call business decision. And I will certainly have that conversation with you to say, are you sure you want to do logging to and from every room? Did you know that you don't need to do that? And did you know it was a business decision? Nonetheless, it could also mean that logging to and from in a security system design was a holdover from the ACMPR, and the consultant or the designer or security contractor didn't realize that you don't need them anymore. Doesn't make it wrong. It just means it's overkill. Number 3 on the list is video surveillance, and this is probably a big one. I see this all the time. Whenever we don't design a security system, especially video surveillance, I often see that it's way overkill, inside of a facility and outside. Yes, you do need video surveillance. Yes, it is a regulatory compliance piece. Yes, there are security best practices that dictate cameras should be in certain areas. I'm talking an IT room. It doesn't change the fact that I've seen tons of designs that include video coverage of every square inch from your facility walls to a fence line. That is not needed under the new regulations. Under the old regulations, you did need to detect movement through the site. Under the new, you no longer need to do so. I've seen cameras inside every single office. Again, using the example of 15 offices, has a motion detector and a camera inside that office. Doesn't need it. If you are protecting the facility using the facility walls as your perimeter, maybe you do need it, but I'm pretty sure you can use an exterior camera to cover the same space without having to have cameras in every single office. I've seen cameras inside of electrical rooms, RO rooms, mechanical rooms, maybe a mechanical platform. I've even seen cameras on a rooftop. I would encourage you to reach out to that designer to figure out, why did you do cameras on the rooftop? If you're using a fence disturbance system and a fence to protect the perimeter of your site, do you really need cameras on your roof? Maybe you want them there as a business decision. You better tell Health Canada which cameras are business decision and which ones are compliance. Nonetheless, is it truly needed? Here's an example of what I consider to be overkill when it comes to video surveillance. Under the new regulations, you only need to get ideal images of people coming and going from cultivation spaces. You no longer need cameras inside cultivating rooms. Some consultants and some security system installers and contractors argue you need cameras on both sides of an entrance door leading to a cultivation space. That is absolutely untrue. You can have a camera inside of the room that covers that one door, gives ideal images of everybody coming and going from that door. You could have a camera in a hallway that covers the same door just from the hallway side. It's absolutely doable. In fact, I would go as far as to say, under a new guiding document that Health Canada released, they do state a camera in a hallway that could cover multiple entrances into a cultivation space or spaces could suffice as long as those images are ideal. It's not to say that the contractor or security designer was wrong. They probably had good intentions in mind. They do want to make sure they get ideal images of everybody coming and going from that space. But do you need cameras on both sides of the doors? You do not. That's an example of what I consider to be overkill. Number 4 on the list is overkill in the way of the actual service offerings of the security systems. So what we're talking about are the options available to each security system. The intrusion detection systems have options available. They could do funky things for you. Not only that, also the access control system can do extra things for you that may not be needed. As an example, do you really need man traps? Man traps are when 2 doors are locked, one door can't be opened unless the other one is closed. Do you truly need that? Do you need mustering, people counting? Do you need the access control system to know when somebody went in a room and when somebody went out? Do you need the access control system to do what's called anti-passback? Meaning, if I swipe my card on a reader and I go into that room and I hand my card to a person behind me, when they swipe that card on that reader, it won't let them in the door. It'll set off an alarm. Why? Because it recognizes that 2 people are trying to go in the room with the same card. Do you need that? Absolutely not. Could you have it? Potentially. It's not a bad security best practice, but you'll find also it may be a hindrance to your operations when people forget to swipe. Nonetheless, video surveillance is a big thing when it comes to overkill and how it's configured and the service offerings available for video surveillance systems. Video surveillance systems have what's called analytics, either built into the camera or built into the software. They can do a lot of cool things. They can detect when somebody's walking the wrong direction around your facility. They can detect when a vehicle went out the exit gate and in the entrance gate. They can detect if a vehicle backs up the wrong way. They can even do people tracking when somebody is inside of your fence line and they're walking around the facility. The video surveillance system can put a little box around that person and follow them everywhere they go. Is it required? Absolutely not. Do you want it? Potentially. Of course, there are pros and cons to that, but I would consider that to be overkill. As an example, do you really want your video surveillance system to take a snapshot of every single car that comes into your fenced compound and the license plate of that car record that license plate, store it on a server so that if something should happen, you can go back and check out the car and the license plate. If that's something you want to happen, it's not a bad thing, but it's not a requirement. Here's another example. You want to do people tracking of anybody walking around your facility. You want to know where they went, how they got there. Potentially you're using PTZ cameras that can move the camera and track somebody where they go. But if you've got an employee that likes to smoke and they're just outside pacing back and forth while they're having a cigarette, do you really want that camera just recording all images almost at 30 frames a second because a person's walking back and forth? Potentially not. There are good times to use analytics and bad times to use analytics. In my opinion, a camera records video images. Be mindful of how much you want that camera to do and how much you're overtaxing the system, and of course how much you're recording, because it could be overkill. And that leads me to my fifth point of overkill that I see all the time with security system designs and obviously configuration of those designs, and that is video surveillance redundancy. What I'm referring to is a server that has a redundant server. So obviously you need to record images onto a server. For compliance cameras, it has to be recorded for 1 year as a minimum. For any sort of business decision cameras, you can record for 30 days, 15 days, or not at all. That's your choice. But it doesn't change the fact that you have to record images on a server. And some contractors will say, well, you need a redundant server. You need another server that records those same images in case the first server went down. Or if the first server fails, the cameras can still record on the second server. As much as that sounds great in theory, it does sound good when it comes to security best practice, but is it really needed? Because you got to think to yourself, okay, if my server goes down, it's great that there's another server that's willing to take its place and that can still record images. But what happens when a camera goes down? Are we really doing full redundancy to the system if a camera goes down? Server can't record a camera image if the camera doesn't actually send the images out because it's broken. What about the network switch? And this is the device that powers your cameras but also takes all the communication from your cameras, the images, and sends them to the server. What if that switch goes down? You could potentially lose 32 cameras, maybe even only 16 cameras. Do you have another switch on site? If that switch goes down, does it automatically transfer over to another switch so you're getting full redundancy? Probably not. What about any wiring associated with the camera? What if you've got a Cat6 cable that's run to every single IP camera, which you probably already do have? Is there a secondary wire run? Because what if that wire all of a sudden doesn't transmit images? What if there's interference? What if it's broken? Well, if there's no wires attached to your cameras, you're not recording any images. Not saying that redundancy is bad. It's just to say that I'm going to have the conversation with you to say, do you really want redundancy? It's not a requirement under the regulations. And it may be overkill. It may be not something you want to spend right now, the money spending right now to be able to get it. You may want to get it later on, but is it worth the extra $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to ensure that the video surveillance server is always recording? Or is it better to throw preventative maintenance at it or contracts at it? What I'm getting at is if a server goes down, is it better for you to have an agreement in place with the person that installed it to say, hey, when this server goes down, you're going to know about it because it's going to send a signal to you. You're going to send a technician within 12 hours to replace it. Maybe that's a better solution, because if a network switch goes down, it doesn't matter how many servers you're recording images, it's not recording anything. So just be careful when somebody says full redundancy, may not be totally fully redundant. Nonetheless, as I mentioned before, we do a ton of reviews of security system designs done by other people, other consultants, other security contractors. Not to say what they're doing is wrong. It's just to say it may be overkill. It's not uncommon for us to review these designs and shave $20, $30, $40, even up to $150,000 off of your design because it's not needed. You'll still get a license with just the bare minimum. And we'll also have that conversation with you to say, what do you want the system to do? Are you sure you want to track somebody walking around your facility? Do you really want that license plate to be recorded? Do you really want a motion detector inside of your washroom? You definitely don't want a camera in there. That's a privacy issue. Do you really want cameras on your rooftop when you don't need them? The answer is probably no. You don't need all that stuff. So reach out to us. We'll definitely help you. We'll reverse engineer. We'll value engineer your security system design. Our designs already incorporate value engineering, security best practices, and compliance without overkill. Once again, it's Chris Besnoy, Chris B, CSB Security Inc. We do a ton of these videos. They have been updated post October 17th, 2019. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.